Hello. In this video, we'll be discussing what bonds are and the different types of bonds available. First, let's talk about long-term debt. And debt means liability. And typically, a liability requires a future payment of cash or some sort of other asset in a specified amount that is due at a specified date. Okay, so companies need money to operate. They can generate those funds through internal source, meaning they make money and so they reinvest the money that they earn. And many times they need an external source of funding. And that could be done by either issuing more equity, which is stock, or taking out more debt. Many times the debt can be in the form of a loan from a bank, but also there's another form of debt called bonds. And we'll get more into it in a few seconds. But when you present a liability, when we're talking about long-term liabilities in this video, and actually in this entire chapter, which for the most part means that they are due in longer than a 1 year period. And when that occurs, the liability must be stated at its present value. The present value is made up of the present value of the principal payment plus the present value of interest payments, which we will get to at a later video. So many times a company, rather than going to a bank for a loan, they will issue what's called bonds. And when we say issue, it means sell. And what the bonds will state, it's a liability for the issuing company, and they state that they are re-obligated to pay at a future date a stated amount, right? It's at the maturity date, plus interest payments. So essentially, a company will sell a bond, right? Let's just say it's a $1,000 bond. You pay me $1,000, me being the company, and I will issue you a bond. And the bond will be for $1,000, plus it'll have some sort of interest rate stated on the bond. Now, in my example, the stated amount is $1,000. It can also be called, the stated amount is sometimes called principal amount, par value, face amount, or maturity value. Those are all interchangeable terms. The periodic interest, the interest rates can be called stated interest, coupon rate, or nominal rate. Again, those are all interchangeable. A stated rate is not the effective interest rate. Effective interest rate. And that'll come into play in later videos, but just know that the stated rate is not the effective interest rate necessarily. Let's go through some terms related to bonds. A bond indenture. So a bond indenture describes the specific promises made to the bondholders. So bonds are sold out to the public in increments of $1,000 or $5,000. So this allows the corporation, instead of going to a bank to borrow $1 million or $10 million, they have the option to sell bonds out in the public, and these are in small increments, so many different investors can buy into the bonds. And rather than have a formal agreement with every single bondholder, which could be thousands of investors, the bond indenture is an agreement that is held by a trustee, usually a commercial bank or some sort of other financial institution that is appointed by the issuing firm, so the corporation that sold the bonds. And what the trustee does is they represent the rights of the bondholder. And so the trustee holds this bond indenture, which is a contract, if you will, that describes the specific promises that are made to the bondholders from the issuing firm. And so if a company fails to live up to the terms that they stated in their bond or the bond indenture, then the trustees can bring legal action against the company. There are several different types of bonds, and these are bonds that might have, there's different types and there's different features so that it can be appealing to different investors. There's all kinds of features that could be added onto a bond. But let's talk about this type of bond. A debenture bond is an unsecured bond. And we learned about unsecured and secured liabilities when we talked about lines of credit. But it's an unsecured bond, unsecured liability. So when you, as the investor, purchase a bond from an issuing company, you're just trusting that the company is in full faith and has enough credit to be able to pay you back at a later date. So no specific assets are pledged as security. There's no collateral, and when it comes to bankruptcy or liquidation, the debenture bond investors have the same standing as the company's other general creditors. They have the same ranking as the general creditors, and the general creditors have a higher ranking than the shareholders. The only exception to that is if a bond is issued, a subordinated debenture bond, and that specifically means that that shareholder is not entitled to receive any liquidation payments until the claims of other specific debts are satisfied. There's also, so debenture bonds is one type of bond. Another type of bond are mortgage bonds, and these are secured bonds, meaning that they are backed by a lien on specified real estate. So, which just means that there's a piece of real estate that's used as collateral on the bonds, such that if the issuing company for some reason cannot pay back the bonds, there's a piece of real estate that can be sold, and the money generated from that sale will be used to pay back the bond holders. Now, because as an investor, there is less risk when purchasing a mortgage bond, then typically when those bonds are issued, they will be issued at a lower interest rates than if the investor had purchased a debenture bond, which is unsecured. Continuing different types of bonds, there are coupon bonds that don't really exist much anymore, but in years ago when, not when everything was so digital, we didn't really have, everything was more paper-based, that the bond holder, you buy a bond and you get a certificate for a bond and had these coupons to redeem for interest. Usually, bonds usually pay interest every 6 months. And so they would, they literally have to tear off a coupon in order to redeem their interest. But now when interest is paid on bonds, they're just directly mailed to the bondholder. A type of bond, another type of bond is called a callable bond. And a callable bond means it's a feature that is placed on the bonds that allows the issuing company, right, the company that sold the bonds, to buy back the bonds before their scheduled maturity date. So if I sell, let's just say a 10-year bond, then if it doesn't have a call feature, then you give me money today for that bond, and I will give you that money back plus interest, over the 10-year period that I've paid you. However, a call feature says that I, as the issuing company, am actually allowed to buy back that bond before the 10-year maturity date. And that's usually done when interest rates drop, right? When the interest rates decrease, then the issuing company doesn't want to keep paying interest on these long-term bonds at this really high rate when they can buy back the bonds and then reissue new bonds at a lower interest rate. The issuing company has a valuable right because they're able to call those bonds. So also typically callable bonds, because of that reason, will have a higher stated interest rates on those bonds compared to non-callable bonds. Now the call price, the price that the issuing company will pay back the bond holder at a future date if they decide to call that bond, is pre-specified when that bond is issued. So everyone knows at what amount that bond can be purchased back from the bondholder, and it usually exceeds the bond's face amount. So in my example that I sold a $1,000 bond, if I issued a $1,000 callable bond and I said it's callable at 103, then that means that at a future date, if I decide to buy those bonds back, I would have to give you the face amount times 103%. So which equals $1,030 is what I would need to, as the issuing company, would need to pay back the bondholder. Oftentimes, callable bonds have what's called a sinking fund redemption, and that's when corporations may be actually required to redeem the bonds on a pre-specified year-by-year basis. So that could be another feature that is added on to the callable bond. So not all callable bonds have that. Another type of bond is called a serial bond. A serial bond is a type of bond issued where a portion of the total principal amount matures in different installments, in different staggering intervals rather than on a single date. And this kind of bond provides for a company to have the flexibility to gradually repay debt over a period of years rather than having it all due at the same time. The bonds we'll be talking about in this video are called convertible bonds, which is another feature that could be added onto a bond. And this feature states that the bond, which is the liability, can be converted into shares of stock. And so this is the investor, right? The bond holder, same thing, the bond holder can decide to convert the bonds that they have into shares of stock in the company.